Where do you go in that regime? Where do you go? I get emotional. Where do you go? Where's a safe place? Where do you go to be yourself?
And if you end up with a bad credit rating, well, you ask for it. You were the one thinking that you had nothing to hide.
Who is who? That means who is thinking what?
So in the United States they say it can't happen here? Well, I'm sorry, yes it can.
Especially if they organize, especially if they associate. Just literally the only thing left now is in my head that's private, and even that's suspect with emerging technology. The power of the state through instruments like surveillance ultimately turn against the people, against the people, against the people, against the people, against the people.
Imagine a society where everything you do, everything you say, and everything you buy is controlled and evaluated by the authorities. It's not science fiction. In China, it's a reality. From now on, citizens' lives are rated and assessed. This is what the Chinese Communist Party calls social credit.
Here's our chart of excellence models. I'm the second one.
In Fulushan, the villages have been rated for a year. There are good citizens who contribute to the community, and bad ones, those who, for example, leave their trash out. Cheng Kejong is featured on the Wall of Honor because of his exemplary behavior.
It's because I help to keep the village clean. I also help people improve our environment, and I help people become wealthier. I'm proud, but it's also a lot of pressure, because when you're on this wall, you always want to be better.
Mainland China is advancing its surveillance state policies with an implementation of the social credit score system. Slated to go into effect in the year 2020, the system will incorporate 600 million CCTV cameras across the country, monitoring daily activities of the communist nation's 1.5 billion citizens.
Well, I think that the government and the people running the plan would like to go as deeply as possible to determine how to allocate benefits and also how to impact and shape their behavior.
The system will assign the so-called social credit score to each citizen based on their behavior and conduct, political reliability and personal finance. Low-ranking individuals will subsequently be barred from certain activities, such as traveling by trains and airplanes, purchasing properties and even sending children to private schools. This is stirring concerns of a possible human rights abuse, as the system could be used to crack down on political dissent, whilst Chinese authorities maintain it is designed to curb criminal activity. The social credit system's surveillance cameras are said to be able to recognize vehicles and faces and identify certain types of questionable activities, including smoking in non-smoker areas. Additionally, the system will be backed by artificial intelligence. Beijing says its AI development is aimed at boosting China's industrial production and financial sector data processing, but as any dual-purpose technology, the AI could also bolster state security. In other words, the Chinese authorities might be advancing technological developments for the purposes of regime protection.
The Chinese government is enthusiastically backing AI development. In the 13th five-year plan, the importance of AI was elevated to the point where it's considered critical.
The social credit rating system began testing 5 years ago in approximately 30 Chinese cities. It will be rolled out across the entire country by 2020. Good citizens will benefit from discounts on their bills and will be able to get bank loans more easily. Bad citizens will be banned from buying train or plane tickets. For the Communist Party, this system is a way to punish and exclude those they judge to be disturbing the harmony of Chinese society.
By using the mechanism of social credit, we'll be able to establish a blacklist of people and create a system of punishment that will be based on a scientific theory. These punishments will serve as a whip to rebuild moral values. Our society needs it.
Located halfway between Beijing and Shanghai, Rongcheng was one of the first cities to implement social credit in 2013. In the streets, portraits of its best citizens are displayed on posters, like this soldier who saved 2 people from drowning.
This system of social credit influences us, and it also encourages us to not engage in bad behavior.
For example, when we drive, we let pedestrians cross, and when we queue to get on the bus, we don't jump the queue. It seems those who have good marks get discounts on their bills.
In some of China's largest cities, a high-tech effort is underway to bust low-level offenders, jaywalkers. Cameras record them going through intersections, zero in on their face, and then publicly shame them on nearby video screens. It's all part of the Chinese government's new social credit system, where people's daily behavior is monitored and rated. I think it's a good thing, this woman said. It makes people more honest. But this social credit rating goes far beyond a traditional credit score, which is based on your finances. China's version factors in everything from jaywalking to smoking on trains to buying too many video games. If your score gets too low, you can be banned from buying plane tickets, renting a house, or getting a loan.
In this building, the officials of Rongcheng assign a rating to its inhabitants. We were able to sneak inside and film discreetly for a few minutes. Here, the agents collect data provided by the police, courts, and tax office. Each resident is then given a rating from the letter D for not-so-good citizens to AAA for the best. This also applies to companies. This woman has just obtained the maximum score for her architecture firm.
These are my company records. When I need to respond to calls for tenders, it proves that my company is well rated. The higher the A rating is, the more reliable the company. It's a score obtained by all means. The company must not have conducted illegal actions and pay taxes accordingly.
It can recognize more than 4,000 vehicles.
Chinese technology firms such as SenseTime are helping the government effort by developing advanced cameras that use artificial intelligence to track just about everything. This knows every person, every bike, every car, every bus that goes through the frame.
You can tell whether it is an adult, a child, a male or female.
Police in Beijing have been wearing these glasses that can recognize faces linked to the government's national database to help boost arrests. How advanced is this technology?
This is cutting edge.
Wu Fei is CEO of a company that makes the glasses. He claims he doesn't know how the government intends to use his technology.
I have no idea.
Really?
Yes.
Do you trust the government the way they're using your technology?
Sorry, I can't answer this.
You can't answer that.
This is outside our scope of questions.
The fear, of course, is that the government may use this social credit scoring system to punish people that it deems not sufficiently loyal to the Communist Party. And trying to clear your name or fight your score is nearly impossible because there is no real due process. Jeff?
Reward good citizens and punish bad people. Human rights activist Hu Jia is already blacklisted. Deprived of his passport for 10 years, his movements are limited. He says the social credit system will allow authorities to more easily punish those who do not pledge allegiance to the party.
In China, the people who will lose the most credit are those who do not agree with the Communist Party. We can't criticize society or the current system, nor should we say bad things about the highest levels of power and the leader. In fact, this social harmony desired by the party is set to maintain the stability of society, but it only serves to guarantee the monopoly of its power.
For China's population, already scrutinized by the country's 117 million surveillance cameras, the social credit system only signals a further decline in freedom.
Nearly 15 million people have already been prevented from traveling. Journalist Liu Hu is one of them. He recently tried to book a flight but was told he couldn't because he was on the list of untrustworthy people. I can't buy property. My child can't go to private school, he says. You feel like you're being controlled by the list all the time.
These developments are giving a prime example of the nascent surveillance state, stirring concern among privacy advocates worldwide. This is particularly relevant in the wake of the Cambridge Analytica scandal, which revealed rampant data collection by social networks, such as Facebook. This data is subsequently used to create comprehensive profiles of each user, and the line between advertisement targeting and repressive surveillance is very thin.
In a few years, there will be some serious drawbacks coming. For example, if you take the insurance industry, Facebook just released an algorithm that is able to give you some rating, some sort of credit rating, which is kind of weird when you think about it, but totally normal in terms of big data. Facebook is totally able to predict if you will pay back your loan or not. Credit rating is totally predictable. It will happen. In a few years, your personal information, the one you're willingly putting online, on Facebook, Twitter, all this thing, will give you credit rating. And if you end up with a bad credit rating, well, you asked for it. You were the one thinking that you had nothing to hide.
Arguing that you don't care about privacy because you have nothing to hide is no different than saying that you don't care about freedom of speech because you have nothing to say. But the bottom line here is, even if you're not using a given right at this precise moment, other people do. Saying that you don't care about a right because you're not using it personally is the most antisocial thing you can possibly say. What it's saying is that I don't care about other people. Now, particularly if this is being said by someone who occupies a position of privilege. You know, if you're a rich, old, white guy sitting on the very top of society, you don't care what the laws are, you don't care what the rights are, because society is ordered to protect your interest. It's the minorities who always face the greatest risk.
The point is, it's collecting data on that scale on everybody in a country presents the opportunity for the government to go really bad. They just don't understand that. Now, people in Germany who have experience with totalitarian states like the Stasi and the Gestapo and SS, they have living memory of what it means to have that kind of information in a central repository for central government to use. And it's only a matter of whether or not the government is favorable to democratic principles or not as to whether or not they become totalitarian or not.
The Minister of State Security always said, we have to know who is who. That was his always repeated sentence. That's the main question in our work.
I spent many, many years listening in on East German communications. And so the motto was to know everything. And at NSA, the mantra under Keith Alexander, director of NSA, Keith Alexander, was to collect it all. Well, part of what it means is collect it all to know it all. And if you know it all, then guess what?
Who is who? That means who is thinking what. This was very important because the Stasi wanted to influence people and to stop political activities before they started.
Wolfgang Schmidt was looking at the NSA. He's a former lieutenant colonel in the East German Stasi. So he was looking at the NSA surveillance program, and he said, to us, meaning the Stasi, this would have been a dream come true.
In Western democracies, if you're talking Germany of today, or if you're talking the United States of today, it's not a police state. But the mechanisms, the instruments of power necessary to effect that are essentially all in place. The only difference really is those in power.
And you then have to trust and depend on your leaders to be focused on more democratic ways of life and supporting that, and you can't guarantee that. I mean, no one can. So in the United States, they say it can't happen here. Well, I'm sorry, yes it can.
The net effect is if you are a law-abiding citizen of this country, going about your business and your personal life, you have nothing to fear.
There are many narratives. One is the nothing to fear, nothing to hide argument. The other one that's commonly articulated is that there is a balance between security and liberty, or sometimes that's more narrowly defined as a balance between security and privacy. It's an extremely problematic way of conceptualizing these things for several reasons. Benjamin Franklin said something along the lines that people who are willing to give up their liberty for security will lose both, and they deserve neither. And what I take from that is that there's not a simple balancing. These aren't things you can easily quantify and measure against each other.
I would say very simply, bulk surveillance has been a direct and absolute continuing failure. I mean, it has stopped. They justified by the terrorist groups and stopping terrorism as the means of doing it, the reason why they have to do it. But in fact, it has failed in every turn. Every attack has happened, and they've not been able to stop it by bulk collection.
The FBI is using domestic terrorism authority to go after the Occupy movement and collect information on people and on a movement that they acknowledge throughout the materials is a peaceful, nonviolent movement.
Anybody and anybody associated with them were surveilled, which meant they had carte blanche, treat them as a threat, and simply in league with the government and others to find out everything there was to know about them. Remember, Occupy Wall Street, interestingly enough, did end up resulting. People were on the streets facing police. Right? Meanwhile, there's all the hidden side of that. And with with cameras that can now do facial detection from many hundreds of meters away, scanning crowds, right? And incorporating that all into databases just based on a few select points. So you understand why the state wants to send examples, right? They don't have to have entire segments of the population being obviously outed, right? They just have to keep track of them. And those that are a bit more, let's say, expressing themselves, let's say a bit more questioning about authority, well, they're the ones we're going to pay a little bit more attention to, especially if they organize, especially if they associate. Do we really want a preemptive crime society where if I decide you might be? I mean, this is what's happening. This is where if you get this much information, the temptation of a secret power to abuse it, where you turn your own people inside out because you have the power to do so. And that is pathological. This is a pathological condition. It goes far beyond actual threats. It goes far, you have threats, right? Because that's to justify the need for all of this security apparatus. But you're ultimately using it for social control.
I think any state which does surveillance is essentially to make sure the state power will not be endangered by the people. They want to keep the power. So they want to know what people are doing, with whom they have relationships, so that they can, if necessary, block the people they think are part of the political antagonism.
We redefined what privacy is. No reasonable expectation of privacy. Wow, redefine privacy, so you define it in a way that actually suits the interests of national security. Whoa, remember that thing? Nothing to fear, nothing to hide. Then why, if you're so fearful, are you that fearful of the people? I mean, I can reverse all of this. I can reverse it and say, they must be incredibly fearful of the people. They may not say it that way, but then why would you need all these records, just in case? I think this is something that comes back to who we are as people. I just know from history, I know from my own experience, I know from even dark chapters in US history, that the power of the state, through instruments like surveillance, ultimately turn against the people. And it's not far removed, right? It's not far removed to take that kind of power and now establish something that's clearly undemocratic. And you in essence, are treating all of your people as subjects, right? Not citizens. I give you an example, my own example. I keep saying, what is it like? It's not a very good feeling when you get up every morning knowing that your own government is tracking you. They told me later, we knew when you got up, we knew when you left the house, we knew which vehicles you used, where you stopped, where you shopped. Every electronic communication that they had access to was being monitored on a 24/7 basis, including my phone. Where do you go in that regime? Where do you go? I can get emotional. Where do you go? Where's a safe place? Where do you go to be yourself, right? Are we back down to just my physical body? Just the only thing left now is in my head that's private? And even that's suspect with emerging technology? So where do I go that's safe? Where's the safe room? I get back to 1984. Winston cowered in the corner. Why? Because it was the only place where the surveillance cameras couldn't see him, which meant they knew where he was. And in the end, people forget the rest of the book. They haven't read, people have finished reading 1984. It's quite dystopian because even Winston gives up. Winston is the protagonist. Winston is the person in all of this, right? What happens to Winston is what happens to society.
They pull in all the metadata of your transactions, and then they can do timelines of your entire relationship in the community that you have and the transactions over time in sequence, and build basically a timeline of your electronic life. It's all done automatically with software. It doesn't take people to do it.
They call it the corporate store, sort of in quotes, the corporate store. It started off with just phone numbers, which obviously can be indexed to names and addresses. And then it turned into emails, financial information, internet usage. Well, what they're primarily interested in is who are you hanging out with and what are you saying? Who are you spending time with? This is where the metadata actually is quite significant.
Look down through history. I mean, the cases, most recent ones are the Soviet Union and East Germany. If you looked at the surveillance states that they had and how that worked, was people became very sensitive to being watched and monitored, and they were afraid to do anything unique or different that is adventuresome, to take a risk. Right? That destroys that sense of the freedom to do that when you're being monitored. And so what that does is it stagnates the society. I mean, the society doesn't advance because there's no creativity and innovation.
This is an impact on society that's huge, especially in a free society where we should be able to say what we want to say, especially in a private setting. And that's something that is oftentimes kind of done away with when they ask, what's actually the damage? What's the problem? What's like your direct effect? Where's the dead body, in a way, if you don't have privacy? And we oftentimes don't have a dead body, we just have a body that doesn't move too much anymore.